I can't believe I'm saying this, but this feud with Jon Moxley is genuinely making Orange Cassidy look like a genius. Welcome to Allison Analysis. I'm Ben Allison and I've analysed last night's episode of AEW Dynamite, and here are my 5 key findings. In at number 5, why did Bobby Lashley make his AEW debut in an unannounced match? Bobby Lashley is a draw. He's a huge get for AEW, and so many people were excited to see him debut this weekend at AEW Full Gear. Yet he debuted squashing 2 jobbers randomly on an episode of AEW Dynamite, with it not being promoted beforehand. As MVP stated when Bobby Lashley made his AEW debut, he's the man who needs no introduction, and I understand maybe there's a small percentage of AEW viewers who don't know who Bobby Lashley is, but you don't need to do a match to explain that. You can very simply just say it, and there we are, problem solved. And if AEW for some reason really wanted to show him off before Full Gear, fair enough. But if you're going to do that, announce it ahead of time. They should have announced it in, last week or something like that, so people would tune in to AEW Dynamite to watch it happen. But instead, they announced it during the show. It all felt very random. And I mean, the only thing it achieved was getting the 2 jobbers over. Shout out Cheeseburger, by the way. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm not exaggerating about this. I don't think this is going to mean anybody doesn't buy Full Gear who was going to buy it. But it's just the fact of, I think it was a bit unnecessary. If they were going to do it, it should have been announced so people would have tuned in to see it. I don't really understand what the point of it was or where this idea came from. In at number 4, the Don Callis family finally feels like a faction. Ever since the Don Callis family debuted, it's always kind of felt to me like it's just Don Callis and then a bunch of thrown together wrestlers. But last night, for the first time when they came out, they finally looked like a faction, a group which was together. They all came out with similar styles of attires, they all had a similar visual identity, and in the ring they had great chemistry together. And while I always joke that I'm not a fan of 8-man tag team matches, and in AEW that almost always is the case, I absolutely loved the All-Star 8-man tag team match last night. It made a lot of sense, and it was just really fun to watch. I mean, multiple storylines were advanced during it, the crowd was loving it, Powerhouse Hobbs came across like a massive babyface, and Kyle Fletcher and Will Ospreay massively advanced their feud, and now I'm even more excited to see them step in the ring together this Saturday at AEW Full Gear. It was a great start to the show, it got the crowd invested, and it did what a go-home show is meant to do. Advanced storylines for the pay-per-view, so people buy it, and I think this match successfully did that. In at number 3, I love Kris Statlander, but this random face turn has just killed her character for me. I just can't for a second believe that somebody would go from being a nasty heel who just turned on their best friend and now wants to take everybody out in the division to suddenly going back to their old character with no explanation and getting rid of Stokely randomly. It just makes no sense at all. Like, there wasn't even a moment where she suddenly turned face. There was none of that. She got rid of Stokely on TV, so that was a thing, but that was all they acknowledged, and I think that was on Rampage or Collision. And there was no explanation as to why either. I mean, I understand why AEW did it right. It's very clear the reason was that they noticed, hang on a second, everybody in this division is a heel, and we have 2 heel champions, so we need to turn some of the heels face. But you need to do a reason for that. You can't just randomly turn people face or heel without giving a reason, or at least a moment where they properly turn. You can't just do it overnight. And because of this, people haven't known how to react to Kris Statlander in the last few weeks. Her reactions have been fairly silent, and it sucks to say that. And last night, they were a lot louder. And I will say the yellow gear, I think, helped with that, because people were like, oh, there's, somebody wearing bright clothes. They're clearly a babyface. But it just feels so fake to me. It sucks because Kris Statlander is so damn talented, and she deserves so much better. But before we go any further, if you guys could please like and subscribe, that would be massively appreciated. Here at Wrestling Republic, we do between 5 to 10 free videos per week. And in addition to that, we also do a daily live stream every single day at 8 PM UK, 3 PM Eastern, 12 PM Pacific. I hope to see you guys there. In at number 2, I predict Toni Storm is going to return at Full Gear. It has now been announced that Mariah May will finally be having a championship celebration hosted by Mina Shirakawa this Saturday at AEW Full Gear, and Mina is teasing a surprise. And that surprise, well, I think it's going to be Toni Storm. Of course, in an interview with Sports Illustrated yesterday, Toni Storm said that she's officially retired from professional wrestling. I don't believe that for a second. Maybe she's retiring the character, but even that I kind of struggle to believe. And I did originally predict that they were going to hold off on doing Toni Storm versus Mariah May 2 until the Australia show, but the more time goes on, the more I don't think that's going to happen. I think we are going to have the second match between the two at World's End. Mariah May is going to cheat to win, and at that point it will be Mariah May versus Mina Shirakawa at Wrestle Dynasty in Japan in early January, and then from there, where we do the third and final match between Toni Storm and Mariah May at the Australia show. Now, it's quite a while to drag it out, but I reckon they can do it. I mean, they need to take some inspiration from CM Punk and Drew McIntyre's feud earlier this year, because that's an example of a fantastic feud which was just continued for months and months and months, and it never really got old. If they do it right, I reckon they can do it properly, and I'm really excited for their feud. And in at number 1, this is controversial, but I loved the finish to last night's episode of AEW Dynamite. So many people are hating on it online, and I get that, but I'm going to explain why I loved it. Almost always on go-home shows in professional wrestling, we have either the challenger or the champion standing tall over the other person heading into the pay-per-view, and then it's very obvious whoever's down on the floor is the one who ends up winning at the show. But last night, Orange Cassidy went into the segment knowing that he was going to get beaten down. He wasn't shocked by it, he wasn't thrown off, he wasn't anything like that. But what was surprising was that he told his friends, I don't want you guys involved. I want you guys to stay in the back. I have to deal with this. And Mark Briscoe tried to argue with him and he was like, no. He's usually a calm guy, but he raised his voice, Orange Cassidy. He said, no, I'm doing this on my own. And after beating Yuta, it happened. They started beating him up. They tied up his hands in his pockets. The BCC were taking shot after shot at him. And then Jon Moxley said to him, fight back, Orange Cassidy. And Orange Cassidy just threw the lightest kicks ever at him. Those kicks he always does, which do obviously no damage. And the look in Jon Moxley's face, he was fuming. So, of course, they beat him down some more. They then got out of there, they left. Orange Cassidy's friends ran down to help him. They untied him, and Orange Cassidy pushed them away and stood up on his own. He was hurting, but you could just see at the end, the closing shot of the night, Jon Moxley was looking back, and Orange Cassidy was back on his feet. Now, what was so cool about this was Jon Moxley's plan went according to plan. Everything that Jon Moxley wanted to do happened. And yet Orange Cassidy still got the mental advantage heading into the pay-per-view. I mean, it very much was a psychological segment rather than a physical one, because from a physical perspective, it is quite obvious Orange Cassidy just got beat down. But from a psychology standpoint, I absolutely loved this. And I've always said it, I'm usually not a fan of the OC character. There are a few exceptions of when I have been, but I've really been enjoying this feud, and I think this was a brilliant go-home segment. But overall, I thought last night's episode of AEW Dynamite was a fun one. I didn't really have many issues with it. I thought it did a good job at building the pay-per-view. There was a few matches and segments which were kind of nothing, but I think overall this show actually exceeded my expectations, purely because going into it, the card was really weak and I was not excited. But I am excited for Full Gear now. It should be a good one, that is for sure, especially Kyle Fletcher versus Will Ospreay. That is what I think will steal the show. And of course, on Sunday, I will be making a video with my thoughts on AEW Full Gear, so I hope to see you guys there. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys have a great Thursday. See you later. Peace.